To call to order the December 15th, 2020 public hearing for the City of Tampa's Barrio Latino Commission. Welcome, everyone. I'm John Thompson, Chair of the Commission. If you're here to present a project, you will have limited time to make your presentation, so we suggest being thorough but concise. When coming to the microphone, you'll need to identify yourself and your relationship to the project. The commissioners will not ask any questions during your presentation, but your project should be presented in the following order: site plan, elevations, architectural details, wall sections. Staff presents staff report. We will then ask for public comment. Following your presentation, the commissioners will be asking questions in the same order as the presentation. Please state and spell your name clearly. If you're here to speak for or against a project, your time will be limited to 3 minutes. So take some time now to summarize your comments, because the 3 minutes does go by very quickly. Following public comment, the applicant will have 5 minutes for rebuttal. The public hearing will then be closed. The only comments which will be allowed after public hearing is closed will be in response to any questions from the commissioners. The commissioners will then discuss the case and will make their decision based on the city ordinance, chapter 27 of the city zoning code, the design guidelines, the Secretary of Interior standards, design review comments, and the testimony given at this public hearing. The BLC can only act on items that are within our specific jurisdictional responsibility. Owner agents are independently responsible to obtain any appropriate permits and or approvals. If you haven't already done so, please silence your cell phones. And I'd like to have commissioners introduce themselves, starting on my left.
Good morning, I'm Eric Schiller.
Good morning, Jose Jalot.
Good morning, I'm Leaving Win.
Good morning, I'm Alex Andriakos.
Good morning, I'm Liz Welch.
And today we have with us Dennis Fernandez, Ron Vila, Beverly Chusak, and Kamaria Pettis-Mackel. Sorry. Number 11, if you haven't already done so, please silence your cell phones. On the agenda, we have the reading of the minutes from November 17th, 2020. I need a motion for the meeting minutes.
So moved.
Need a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Meeting minutes are approved. Announcements.
Good morning, Commissioners. Dennis Fernandez, Architecture Review and Historic Preservation Manager. Welcome to our final hearing of 2020. By now, you should have your 2021 calendar. If you do not have that, please let Beverly know. We'll make sure to send that back out to you digitally, but does have the public hearing dates for next year identified so that you can plan accordingly. Also, I do have the BLC staff reviews for November. We'll be submitting those into the record. And I just wanted to take a moment to let you know that Libby Jeffries with our staff is retiring after 49 years of service to the city of Tampa. As you know, she's an integral part of our team. We're going to miss her. And if you get a second to wish her well, please take the opportunity to do so. Thank you, and I think we're ready to move on with the agenda.
Good morning, Commissioners. Kamaria Pettis-Mackel from the City Attorney's Office. Will the Commissioners please state on the record whether or not they have any conflicts of interest regarding any of the items that are listed on the agenda?
No.
I see no shaking of the heads in reflecting a no to the answer, just for the record. Additionally, will the Commissioners please state whether or not they have any any ex parte communication regarding any of the items that are listed on the agenda?
No.
Thank you.
Moving on, we have no continuations this morning, so we'll advance on to the swearing. Anyone in the audience who's going to be presenting or testifying this morning, please stand and raise your right hand for the swearing.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you'll be providing this morning is the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do. With that, we are ready for our first case, and Ron will introduce the case. Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. Ron Vila, I'm staff with Historic Preservation. This morning we are going to start our hearing with BLC 21-14/TA CPA-20-23. This is for a comp plan amendment. This is a recommendation to City Council for the address of 1402 North 19th Street and 1802 East Third Avenue. The underlying zoning attached to these parcels are YC6. Moving through the photo presentation. This is looking at an aerial. There is the property in question. There's two of them. There's one on the corner of Angel Oliva Senior Street, which is also known as 18th and 3rd Avenue. Property in question is highlighted in the green box. There is a parcel here, and then there's a little division line that separates an additional parcel to the east.
We can't see what you're talking about.
It's on my screen.
They'll
Not
have
on
to
ours.
Convert to the,
Give them a minute, please. That's okay. You want to take a minute? Will this one work here?
We can see that.
Can we zoom in, please? Thank you. So just to reiterate what I was discussing here, there's two parcels that are within this green box. They're on the corner of 3rd Avenue and Angel Oliva Senior Street. This is the comp plan amendment. This is showing the earlier map from 1929. There was no development in that area. And once again, it's on the corner of 3rd Avenue, and this shows 18th Street. This is to kind of clear it up a little bit. There is one parcel that is here, and then there's a sliver of land, and that's why when I introduced the cases, there were two separate parcels attached to it. Currently, you see the rooftop of the corner that flanks the corner there. This is a non-contributing structure that faces 3rd Avenue. As you look at the facade that faces Angel Oliva, just to get a reference point of what's on the subject site, and to the rear. Directly across the street, you have a cigar factory, the Carawa Disca. A couple of street shots. This is looking down 3rd Avenue to 19th Street, which is to the east, and turning around in the other direction. This is looking down 3rd Avenue to the west. Abutting the site is a vacant parcel. And this came in front of the board on December 17th, 2019, there for a comp plan amendment as well. They did receive the UMU zoning classification. So past action, this is the property in question here today on the corner of 3rd and Angel Oliva. This is what you're reviewing for a recommendation to City Council. And just as past action, the abutting property to the east was reviewed by this board and did go to City Council and receive approval for the UMU 60 that is being requested today. That concludes the photo presentation. At this time, I'll have the agent come forward.
Thanks, Ron.
At this time, Danny Collins with the Planning Commission is going to address the board. He has a quick photo presentation.
Good morning, this is Danny Collins with the Planning Commission staff. This is Tampa Comprehensive Plan Amendment 2023. The subject site is within the Central Tampa Planning District. It's within the historic Ybor neighborhood, and it's also within the Ybor City Urban Village. It's shown here on the map. This is an aerial map of the subject site and the surrounding properties. You'll see the subject site's outlined as black color. It's on the northeast corner of East 3rd Avenue and Angel Oliva Senor Street. Oops. Quick background, this is a privately initiated request. It's a small scale amendment. It's approximately 0.23 acres, and the request is to change from the general mixed use 24 future land use designation to the urban mixed use 60 designation. Here is the adopted future land use map. You'll see the subject site under that general mixed use 24 category. There's UMU 60 directly to the east and south of the subject site. And then there's GMU 24 to the east and southeast of the subject site. This red represents the Community Commercial 35 designation. This is the proposed future land use map showing the subject site under the urban mixed use 60 category. This is a slide showing the potential impacts of the proposed request. Currently under the GMU 24 category, the site can be considered for 5 residential units or just over 15,000 square feet of non-residential development. As proposed, the site can be considered for 13 dwelling units or just over 13,000 square feet of non-residential development. So this would allow higher residential density and greater commercial intensity on the subject site. The Planning Commission staff reviewed the request and have found it consistent with several of the policies in the comprehensive plan as it relates to the city planning strategy, development in urban villages and neighborhoods, and also was consistent with the number of the housing policies of the plan. Based on those considerations, the Planning Commission found the request consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of the Imagine 2040 Tampa Comprehensive Plan. I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. We have the opportunity, we have the staff report next. Is there an additional?
The applicant.
Oh, thank you. I got ahead of myself.
How does this go here?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commission members. My name is Mark Bentley, 401 East Jackson Street, Tampa, 33602. I represent the applicant property owners. The intent is to integrate this 0.23 acre parcel, which is approximately 10,000 square feet, into the existing multifamily development that was approved. The CA was approved by this commission sometime in December of 2019. The city has a provision in its comprehensive plan that prohibits transfer of entitlements between properties that do not have the same land use designation. So, for example, these properties, I'm pointing to the east, these were the subject matter of the CA, and this is the property in question right here. So from what we call the flop house, the contributing structure located on 19th, that was already UMU. Then when we came in, as Ron indicated last year, we changed roughly this area to UMU. So now this is being changed. So this allowed the total integration of the project, and you can transfer entitlements throughout the entire project. Also, the GMU 24 category has been characterized by the city as essentially a placeholder that doesn't show any specific development trend. It's kind of a holding pattern until development's proposed, is the way the city describes it in its comprehensive plan. So at this point in time, there's 4 positive recommendations. You have the Planning Commission staff, that's Mr. Collins. The Planning Commission passed a resolution to City Council requesting that they find the plan amendment consistent. That was a few months ago. The Development Services staff, there's a memo in the backup materials that have hopefully been provided to you from Frank Hall, finding the comprehensive plan consistent with the criteria set forth in the land use element of the comprehensive plan. And now you have the Barrio staff finding the proposed amendment consistent. And obviously, we'll be back here again to tweak the project, and that'll be presented to the commission for a CA approval. So if you have any questions, I'll certainly attempt to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioners, Ron Vila, staff with Historic Preservation. Staff finds that this application is consistent with the objectives delineated in the City of Tampa Code of Ordinances with Chapter 2795A2H. Your charge this morning is to review and recommend reasonable land use changes to the extent necessary to preserve the historic integrity and appearance of the local historic district. Any future development on this parcel will come back to this board for a certificate of appropriateness. I'll be here to answer any questions, and Mr. Collins is here as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Ron. We have the opportunity for public comment for this case, if there's anybody here to speak for or against this particular case. Now seeing none, we'll open it to commissioners to ask questions of the applicant. Starting it to the left.
No questions, thank you.
No questions.
No questions?
No questions.
Nope, I don't have any.
Wow. No questions from the commissioners? You have 5 minutes for rebuttal.
No, I appreciate the opportunity, but I'll pass. Thanks.
Well, we appreciate seeing you again. Let's see, so what we can do is we'll close the public hearing, and we can discuss the case and move to a motion.
It appears that by granting this, they're going to actually have more flexibility with how to create a compatible streetscape and at the same time incorporate the historic structure, so I could support it.
Agreed. And then it's exciting to see more of that urban density go into Ybor as well.
Yeah, I would agree.
Okay. I think that that was a pretty easy discussion. So we can ask for a motion regarding this recommendation to City Council.
Yeah, so move to recommend City Council approve BLC 21-14/TA-CPA 20-23 for the property located at 1402 North 19th Street and 1802 East 3rd Avenue for the proposed rezoning from GMU-24 to UMU-60. Finding that is consistent with section 27-95A2H of the City Tampa Code of Ordinances.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second with no attachments or anything to it, no amendments. So all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, thank you. Have a great day. Appreciate it.
See you next year.
Good morning, Commissioners. Ron Vila. The next case is BLC 20-167. This has dual addresses as well. The first address is 1705 North 16th Street, and the second address attached to this request is 1704 North 17th Street. The structure that faces 16th Street is a contributing structure that dates back to 1908. The second structure as attached that is on the eastern portion of the site is a non-contributing structure that was constructed in approximately 1959. Both of those structures have the zoning classification as YC1. The request in front of you this morning is for a certificate of appropriateness for mixed use and apartments. They're going to do some site improvements and renovations to the contributing structure. Also attached to the request is there's 3 variances attached. I spoke with the agent. He is going to address the variances first. If the variants are successful, then we'll go into the certificate of appropriateness. So on this one, I'm going to start with the vicinity map. The parcel in question is highlighted in the shaded green area. This is to show that the concentration of the commercial core on 7th Avenue is to the north. This property is between 16th and 17th Street on 6th Avenue, which is the railroad tracks. This is the Sanborn map from the early 1900s. Once again, the property in question is here in the shaded green area. A portion of the building, as I stated, the contributing structure is there, and then the addition was on the eastern portion. This is 16th Street, then you have 17th Street, and then the railroad tracks run to the south. There is an alley that runs east-west to the north of the subject site. This is looking from above. This is the contributing portion of the building, and this is the non-contributing that will be removed, and then they'll come vertical in this section here. And then there is a parking area currently there. There's a surface parking lot that will have construction on top of that. This is looking back at the buildings that are there. This is looking from the south, looking north. This is the portion of the building that's contributing, and then the non-contributing portion here. This is obviously the portion that faces the railroad tracks. As you look at the front elevation, this is faces 16th Street along the alley to the north. You have this condition. Just another shot of that alley. Looking at some of the fenestration on the period building. Moving to the south elevation, which faces the railroad tracks and the current parking. Once again, this is the contributing structure. Consistent with more of an industrial style building as it worked with the railroad track and the metal windows here. You see the visor that's in place over the front facade with the tie-back rods. Some additional windows. These are the ones that face the alley. Moving to the southern portion. This is the surface lot as it exists today. Looking at more of a complete shot of that south elevation. You see the railroad tracks in the foreground, the contributing structure, and then the non-contributing as you move to the east towards 17th Street. This is the facade on 17th Street. The condition of the alley and that north elevation. The current connection of the buildings. And just to conclude, looking from 17th back into the subject site, you have the non-contributing. This is 17th Street here, non-contributing structure, surface, and then the railroad tracks. And then the condition at the railroad tracks as you move to the south. And that concludes the photo presentation. At this time, Mr. Alfonso will address the board. Once again, focusing on the variance first.
Thank you, Ron. I do want you guys to know that there is a very nice certificate of appropriateness presentation that hopefully we'll get to. I also just want to take a very brief moment and thank the service that this commission does. Some of you that are, yes?
Kamaria Pettis-Mackel from the City Attorney's Office. Can you please announce your name for the record?
Albert Alfonso, 1705 North 16th Street. We bought our property in 1998. We are kind of old-standing citizens of Ybor City, and I've sat where you all have sat. Sometimes it's a thankless job. Certainly this year has been a very difficult year for all of us, but you guys have done great work during this year. Hotel Haya, we're pretty excited about that. If you guys have not seen it, I believe Mr. Thompson and Mr. Gelatz were on that approval about 49 years ago when we were in front of you. I can't believe you're still on this commission. They're going to have to drag you guys out. But hopefully, if you guys come see that, it is currently ranked #1 in the USA Today survey for new hotels across the country. And so I believe that this is a great moment for Ybor City, and I believe that you guys are the stewards of a great treasure. So I want to thank you guys for the work you do. That having been said, as Ron had mentioned, this is the site. I do want to take note that Prana is here, and we are asking for 3 variances. One is for a height variance from 45 to 54. We got that height from a couple of what we call hindrances to the development. Right now, we are the existing the existing train station where our office is right now. It's holy ground for us. I'm Cuban. Jose Marti gave a speech there. It is certainly something that we do not want to touch. So on the height variance that we're asking for, one of the issues is that we are not taking advantage of the FAR of 3.25. We're at 3.23, so I will show you kind of geometrically how we're disposing square footage. This is also the parking garage, which is adjacent to us, which is roughly over 70 feet tall, depending on where you measure it. The tower is over 80 feet tall, so certainly these two sort of bookending buildings are, where we are going to make the argument that, the height is not an issue. So as Ron had said, this is the historical building. This is our train station where our offices are right now. Programmatically, we're going to be putting restaurants and a gym and some retail on the ground floor. So we are actually pushing our offices up to the 2nd floor and really activating the streetscape, which I think programmatically is very important. The other thing that I do also want to mention is, and this is this is the non-contributing structure which will be coming down, and you can see sort of Prana in the background. We also have met with...
Could you adjust that picture for us? It's not square
I'm
on
sorry.
the screen.
Yeah, there you go. Better?
Thank you.
Yes. I'm going to show a couple of exhibits of how, we actually relate to the Prana roof deck. We certainly are good neighbors with Prana, and we want to make sure that our project does not block anything from that wonderful roof deck that they have there. And we actually used their parapet line as our datum line. So this is the general site plan. Right here you can see the train station building right here. We are pushing out into the parking lot here with a 3-story addition, of which 2 floors of that would be our office, and then we're going to inhabit the 2nd floor of the train station. This is the micro-unit apartment project. It's 176 units. I do want to stress the fact that having residential units this close to 7th Avenue. I was speaking to Richard Gonsmart yesterday, and he was saying this is really, truly what we need, is to have bodies right off of 7th Avenue feeding into 7th Avenue. So I just think that, programmatically, it is a really good use for the site itself. We are pushing off on the top floor of this building. We're pushing back 26 feet off of 17th Street. And we're pushing back 3 feet off of the south, where the railroad tracks are. There's a swimming pool that we're going to propose here, but obviously another hardship that we're dealing is putting residential on an alley, is causing by code, we have to do some certain geometrics to actually make the project work. So this is the diagram that talks about this transposition of square footage for our FAR. Again, this is holy ground. This is the existing train station building, and we're taking that footprint and we're transposing it over here to the other side of the site. against the railroad tracks, which we feel is quite appropriate from an urban density standpoint. This is the proposition we're talking about here. This is, we see this a lot, as Ron had mentioned. It's industrial. Our train station has a lot of the industrial characteristics that are in the Ybor City Design Guidelines, and we are coming in with these really very nice, intense steel windows. If you get a chance to look at Haya, we were able to come in and do some really nice real steel windows on that project, and we intend to do that. I know I'm jumping kind of into the certificate of appropriateness, but the other thing I do want to mention here is sort of the pushback here and the change of material that we are doing on the top floor of the residential project. I mean, I think that is another way that we are sort of making a gesture for the height. There is precedence that you'll see in the future presentation that talks about Paris and rooftops and things like that really help to bring the scale down and keep that datum line intact. This is the first floor plan, and there is, let me see if I can read this. On the other two variances, there is a loading service zone, which is basically reduced the space to 12 feet by 30 feet for local deliveries only. I do want to stress that there is no semis because this is a residential project, and this is the exact loading dock that you guys approved for Haya, just to give you some historical context. Also, we're asking for allowing the maneuverability in the right-of-way for loading and service zone. Obviously, you guys know that loading and service is a big issue for the city of Tampa and Ybor City. It's probably a future workshop at some point. I'm constantly having to sort of negotiate around large semi-trucks and whatnot. But right now that's not going to be a problem on our project, and I think that that's also a little bit of a hardship because we are actually burying the loading dock within the project itself, which is causing the height of the building to go up. So I don't know if the board is interested in programmatic elements. We can come back during discussion and talk about that. I do want to mention here again, we're trying to be quite sensitive to the historical building and are taking a very purist approach. We could add another floor on top of that, but we really feel like that's not the appropriate thing to do. We are still under our FAR of 3.25 on the project. And we also feel that with Prana being at 54 feet and with the adjacent parking garage being much higher than our project, that this is certainly an appropriate request. I think I've gone close to my 10 minutes. We can sort of open it up for discussion, or what would be the board's?
Your time will be, you'll hear a buzzer when you turn.
Okay, great. Well, I'll keep going then. This is certainly the most sensitive elevation, we think, on the project. We are activating, again, there will be retail space here, a gymnasium entrance here, and also we're coming in with it's a concept we're not at liberty to talk about, but we're looking at something from London that would come in and have, a strong restaurant concept that we really like, and we're pretty excited about, but we can't talk about. Again, you guys will see some of these in the future presentation for appropriateness. I do want to kind of throw this on here. This is obviously the Paris rooftops of the precedents, where you have the zinc tops of the datum line pushes back, so you really get that strong read here of the body of the building, and then the top piece just sort of pushes back. And this is the the diagram that really talks about prana and the relationship of our rooftop to prana. And again, talking about the loading dock, I know that you guys would be excited about this slide, but this is generally the loading docks that we have been involved with and other projects in Ybor. This is the one that's at Haya that you guys approved, and it's very similar to that in geometry. This is sort of an axo from above, which talks about the relationship of prana and the relationship of the addition back here where we're asking for the height variance. Again, you can see we have pushed back the building 25 feet so it doesn't register on 17th Street. We've pushed it back 3 feet here, so it sort of has that really nice feel of sort of a pushback top. Again, the relationship of the project with 7th Avenue.
Excuse me, sir, before your time runs up, Kamaria Pettis-Mack from the City Attorney's Office. Do you want to focus on your hardship criteria for the variances?
I'm sorry, I
The
missed that.
hardship criteria for the variances.
Yes.
Okay.
I don't quite understand that, but do I have to read that?
Exhibit C1, you put your criteria for the hardship.
Yes. Do I read it?
Just state it to the.
Oh,
board
okay.
what you're-
Okay, what I'm asking for. Thank you. Mr. Bentley's not up here to do this for me, so. So our hardships include due to the purest development approach adopted by respecting the historical train station, contributing structure. We are relocating 6,400 square feet of potential FAR development. The square footage allowed to the new construction on the east side of the parcel. Additional hardships are due to the prohibition of residential units opening onto the alley due to fire ratings and the integration of a compactor and a transformer on the site. The variance, the additional 9 feet of height requested, total building height of 54 feet from finished floor will not interfere with the health, safety, or welfare of adjacent properties. The adjacent central Ybor garage is approximately 60 feet at the low point, not including the tower, and the adjacent Prana building is approximately 54 feet. And we feel that the proposed building height requested is in harmony with the adopted Tampa Comprehensive Plan. Thank you.
Commissioners, Ron Vila, staff with Historic Preservation. At this time, the variance portion has been completed by the agent. The board could begin to review the variance request as submitted. You could take them one at a time, or you could have a motion for the variances all together, so that's up to the pleasure of the board. I do have Mr. John Marsh with Transportation that wishes to address the board at this time.
Thank you, Ron.
John Marsh, Transportation. On both the waiver to reduce the size of the one required loading berth from 60 feet to 30 feet, and the chapter 27-283.5 to allow maneuvering in the right-of-way for the loading space on 16th Street, Transportation objects for the reason that it is new construction. And I'm here if you have any additional questions.
Thank you. We have the opportunity for public comment for the variances portion of the application, if there are any people to speak for or against the variance requests.
Thank you.
Good morning to the board. I appreciate your time and opportunity. I'm attorney Candace Colucci, and I represent Talbot LLC and Sam Colucci. So as Mr. Alfonso was speaking about, is that the building that's proposed and the variance that has been requested will be abutting to the Piranha building. So that's what he kept on talking about. So I am here on behalf of the building and the owners of that building. So our main concern really was for that variance from the 45 feet to 54 feet, is that we have 5 floors and the top floor we have is a rooftop. And so the issue that we were looking at was that if this new proposal was going to block the view of Piranha. So we actually met with Mr. Alfonso, who's extremely professional, that he had put that into a consideration when he was drawing out these plans, as he showed you guys. And so as the way it looks right now, there shouldn't be any type of restricted view. He assured us that there isn't, and then he also said he'd be willing to even reduce his building size up to a foot in order to make sure that his building is not blocking ours. And so those were our main issues. We welcome the new development to Ybor to grow that historical community. So we're very excited about it. I know Mr. Alfonso and his crew has put in a lot of effort, and the stuff they have done around the community has really brought in people to that area. So as I said before, at this point in time, we do not have an objection based on those assertions from Mr. Alfonso that his building height, the highest part of the top of his buildings, will not exceed Piranha, which is Talbot LLC, which is at 1619 7th Avenue. That's all I have right now. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Giancarlo Giusti. I live in Ybor. I'm a resident of Ybor. I'm a neighbor, and I also worked in Ybor for about 15 years. I'm part of the fabric of Ybor. I really enjoy the place. We also have a fabrication shop, and we were lucky enough to work in the Hotel Haya, and this is why I'm here. I'm here to support this project. Projects like these bring density to Ybor and activate jobs into the society. It also enhances the residential aspect of Ybor, which is what we need for more density, for more jobs, and therefore better quality of living. Alfonso has done a great job on, bringing the fabric into the historical aspect of Ybor City with steel and tectonics, and we're very happy for that. I hope this project goes forward. I think it looks amazing. Right now, I worked on the warehouse that they're going to demolish for many years, and that is just an empty parking lot that has a lot of homeless people walking around doing drugs, and you can find a lot of needles and all sorts of crazy things because it's just a parking lot that gets activated in the night. Right now, with this development, I think it would be important to bring a nice residential aspect to the community. More neighbors, more people living in there. Ybor is not the same place it used to be 20, 25 years ago. The nightlife has become the daily life, even breakfast life, it's been really great. So I'm encouraging you guys to approve this project. It's really great. Some of the homeless people that activate the parking lot at night, they have become workers for us. We pay some of them to do work for us, so not only we're transforming the community, but then we're bringing something beautiful into the streets, which is 3 facades all at once. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any additional public comment for the variance request, so we will have the opportunity to ask questions of the applicant from the commissioners, starting on my left.
Good morning. I'm all for this project. I think it's wonderful. My question is, I don't see any hardships on the hardship request. Can you go over those again?
Currently, we could technically put density above the existing train station building. We're allowed under the YC1.
Well, actually,
I'm glad you bring that up because
he's asking a question.
you've got me.
Let's go ahead and we'll save the back and forth for the rebuttal.
No, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. I was just asking, are you, Mr. Commissioner, asking questions of the applicant to address?
Yes, of course.
Okay, all right.
I thought that's what I was doing.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I don't see any hardships at all regarding the height variance. And you kind of lost me about transferring allowable space to someplace else. I've been doing this for a few years. I've not seen anybody do that. It kind of looks like smoke and mirrors to me.
Okay.
Can you explain? Yeah, please.
Yeah,
Please explain.
currently, typically when you all approved Hotel Haya, for example, there is, I believe, 20%, Ron, that is allowed. We got a roof structure that was 20% of the existing square footage that was allowed on the roof. So what we're saying is that we go beyond that by the 6,300 square feet, which is above the existing train station, of which I would say is a very fragile building. And certainly we would not want to actually try to gut the building and add another floor to that. So
Okay,
by
I'm
keeping
following you
that
so far.
by keeping that building down, there is FAR that by square footage and by allowance that we're allowed to, and what we're doing is we're taking that FAR square footage because we're not adding it up on top of the train station, and we're moving it to the east side of the project. Does that make sense?
Maybe. Okay,
Yeah.
regarding the variance for height and the hardships that you're citing for that, I don't see them. Could you re-explain that to me?
I'm sorry, Eric, say that again?
Regarding the hardships that you're citing to require the height to exceed the rules.
Right.
And you're asking the variance for.
There's a couple of hardships here. One is by right, we are zoned and allowed 3.25, which is allowable square footage to develop on the site. If we took a kind of, peanut butter and sort of spread it evenly around the site, that would mean adding another floor to the historical train station. Obviously, we don't want to do that because it would completely change the fabric of the project. It would completely change the look of the train station. So we have this sort of, purist approach. This is not smoke and mirrors. It's basically taking that square footage and putting it, on the backside, mostly sort of against the alley on the east side of the project. And we're pushing it back off of 17th Street. Obviously, you saw in the elevations, you can't really see it by pushing it back. So the 6,000 square feet that we are transposing is the 6,000 feet that we could actually add on top of the train station, but we're not.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
One question regarding the variances that you're asking for in terms of loading for the new construction.
Yes, sir.
You mentioned that this project is going to consist of multiple micro apartments. That's kind of a new model here. I'm just curious, trying to ascertain the need for or the intensity of delivery on and off site. Are those apartments, my understanding is they're typically furnished or
They are.
provided furnished?
They are, Jose, yes.
Okay.
They're
So-
typically furnished, so it'd be very light deliveries.
Yeah. So in terms of activity of tenants, it would be not.
Yeah, nobody's moving in and out. They come pre-furnished. This is a company out of California that they've done 16,000 of these in California, and they're doing them here. They are furnished.
Okay, and just to confirm that it appeared from the plans that you're going to present or presented for the variance, the commercial loading dock is just for the micro apartments. It doesn't physically pertain to the commercial space?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, just going over that, can we take a look at the site plan or the
Sure.
first floor site plan, just to understand how the loading and all that maneuvering works?
I assume you want to see the first floor plan?
Right, that's correct.
Yeah. So this is the loading bay that comes off of 17th Street here. And I would say that currently we are, again, I mean, you could argue that, I mean, this is blowing out, because of the height of this guy, it's blowing out, units above, but, currently, we have to negotiate all the time where a lot of these 7th Avenue guys, they'll park right here on 17th Street. So, what we're trying to do is not add to the problem.
Okay. Understand the layout. All right, thank you for showing us that.
Okay.
I think the other commissioners have answered my questions. I think.
Thank you.
I have a question for the Department of Transportation, but I don't know when I need to throw that in here.
You have a question for staff?
Sure. My question is, they are the only ones who have opposed this that I understood, and the reason was new construction, and I don't understand your reason. Can you walk me through that?
Okay. The reason is there is a code for new construction. We expect that when there is a new project that people attempt to accommodate that code.
And you don't think that's happening? Is that not happening in this project?
We have a standard code for calculations for loading for different uses, and the code is very explicit as to what that is. There isn't a provision in the code. There's certainly nothing at this time for micro apartments, the difference in loading for that. There isn't a difference in the code for Ybor City. That we're applying the same loading code we would apply throughout the city. That's one of the reasons that people are often asking for variances to this board, because they feel like that's harder to accomplish primarily in a historic building or a retrofitted historic building. So when it's new construction, we are always going to object, because if we don't show up and object, then people think there is no longer a loading requirement in the city of Tampa.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the reasons we do that is, and you can see throughout the city, where other developers have asked for waivers and gotten them, more and more trucks just loading on the street. So part of the code provision is to get that off the street and into the building, though it is not easy. A semi is very large, and they are asking for a size reduction. And the other is maneuvering in the right-of-way. We prefer people to be loading in a continuous maneuver onto. That's a safety issue, though there are accommodations to minimize that.
So if I understood what you just put up here in reference to someone's question about the loading, you are making an effort to eliminate some of that traffic off 17th, right? That truck traffic.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
you can't have trucks, you're not supposed to have trucks go down 7th
Right.
Avenue. So
And-
you're trying to eliminate some of that truck traffic that you're saying exists,
And-
right?
and-
Am I getting, I want
Yeah,
to make
no,
sure
you-
I'm getting it right.
I'm not supposed to argue one side or the other. I'm just presenting the reason why we will defend the code.
And I don't mean to be argumentative, I'm just asking.
I'm just trying to inform you. Yeah.
Perfect, okay. So that makes a little bit more sense. I couldn't understand the whole, we don't agree because it's new construction. Okay, so now I understand your point. Now I understand where you're coming from. Thank you
Okay.
very much. Okay, that makes sense to me. That's all I have, thank you.
Question. You've made reference to the 6,400 square feet that you don't want to add on top of your existing building, moving it up. And then I recall in the Hotahaya and other projects where you're able to use 20% of the roof that for square footage, what is the 6,400 square feet that you're putting, or what's the size of the space that is on the top floor that you are asking the height variance for? Because do you need-
6,400.
And what percent of the floor plate is that? Is it because it exceeds 20% that you need the height
Yes, sir.
variance?
That's right, John. It exceeds it.
And by what, do you know what percentage that is? Are we going from 60 to 40? And therefore you need the request?
We are, hold on, trying to find that sheet.
Because if you didn't exceed the 20,
We do exceed it, and we exceed it by, graphically, I'll be able to show you.
Right.
It's
I
probably
just-
going to be the last one I find here.
yeah, I'm just talking through it, because if you didn't exceed the 20%, you wouldn't have to have the height variance request.
Here.
Okay,
So what's in yellow is the 20%, John?
okay.
And what is, we're asking for is, what is the square footage of,
Okay.
on top of
So it's about
the trains?
42%.
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay. So that's the scale of it?
Yes, sir.
You've basically said, we want to take 20% that we could have built and put it up top.
Yes, sir.
And therefore, we need to have the variance to do so.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And the variance or the height modification allows you to potentially build more than what you're showing, but you're not going over the FAR for the project. So you're reallocating square footage to the top floor while maintaining the historical character of the other.
Yes, sir. We're actually a little below the FAR.
Right. Okay. Okay, I think that's the gist of the request.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Those are my questions. So you have an opportunity to have a rebuttal for what you've heard. If you have any additional comments or clarifications you'd like to make based upon the three variances.
I mean, the only thing I would say, and I guess this is more of an emotional aspect of just Ybor, again, I think the project needs density to work, and to put this amount of density on 7th Avenue for residential, most of our residential developments have been sort of, blocks away. And so we think that, again, this is sort of, as a resident of Ybor, I'm kind of making the plea here that I really think this is an important project to get 176 bodies on 7th Avenue to really take care of, as Giancarlo Giussi said, a problem right now, and we need the height to do that.
Thank you. So we'll close the public hearing and discuss the case amongst the commissioners.
Please come back to me.
Okay.
I believe the project and more specifically, the variance request do meet the criteria of hardship in that we're really preserving the historic train station and basically shifting the density in a project that appears to be consistent with the long-term growth patterns for the historic district. In regards to the loading, I think given the future use and given the fact that, traditionally we have very fixed street dimensions to work with, that we're always going to run into these sorts of variance requests for commercial loading. And the new use appears to minimize any kind of potential impact that's going to have on the district.
I generally agree, and with the loading that, since one side is compounded by train tracks, you have a lot of difficulties to work with as well.
I think it's an exciting project. I look forward to seeing it.
Thank you, Alex.
I think it's a good thing. It's a very good thing.
Thank you.
Well, we are discussing variances only, so,
Mm-hmm.
in the
I'm okay.
abstract. That's what we can get to the project in a minute, maybe. We got to circle back around.
Thank you. Thank you. I see this as a conundrum, and although it's a wonderful project, and I'm a neighbor, personally I support it, and I'd like to pack as much density as I possibly can into Ybor City, but we're here for the rules. So what I'd like to see is I'd like to see a continuance. I'd like to see us change the rules. Because if we don't change the rules and we approve this height variance, and I'm only talking about the height variance because I've been here long enough to know all about the loading docks and how they don't, it doesn't make any sense, the loading docks. maneuvering in the street, fine, no problem. I'm all for that variance, but I'm not for the height variance. Because we are gonna be inundated with everybody who wants one more floor to make it a little more economically possible to do this. And what are you gonna say to them? What are you gonna say? And how far from a building do you have to be to use its height as your excuse for adding one more floor? Doesn't make any sense. Somehow, and I address this to staff, it's, we need to change the rules, because we cannot do this, well, I can't, in good conscience. It's, you know how many of these we're gonna have? It's really taking off, and we just can't support that. The other two, no problem, got it. Been doing it for a long time, and it more reflects what happens in Ybor City. But the height thing is almost sacrosanct. I'd rather change the rules and then vote on this project. And that's where I am. I don't know if anybody agrees with me.
I understand your concern, and that's the wonderful thing about variances within the historic district, is they're case by case, property by property, the applicant presents specific hardship. I think when you look at this request for additional variance, additional heights along this specific property, where there is a historic building, that it appears that they're really not, they're just maximizing their existing development potential of the site.
Yeah,
At the same time, they're preserving very faithfully the existing historic structure. And then you have to look at the surrounding. How does it affect the other historic properties that are adjacent? And in this case, there's a railroad track. So I think they've made a good case of presenting why on this particular property there is a reason for us to consider a height variance.
I respect that, but I don't agree with it.
Yeah.
No, not at all. No, there's rules. We have to follow the rules, or else change the damn rules. And I'd be all for that. I'd vote for that in 5 minutes. But I don't know. This is a mess.
Well, the transfer of air rights from historic properties, from historic buildings to adjacent properties is a strategy used for historic preservation in every city in the United States that has preservation ordinances.
Well, and I think that the notion that the height restriction is one thing, but if we were to just say that the height could be whatever it is, they still run up against the FAR. So they're bumping, they have a limitation that they're not exceeding there. That is part of the request.
Yeah.
Are there any other discussions or conversation about that?
No, Jose encapsulated my thoughts as well.
Well, I think we need to have some kind of motion for, do we want to take all three and put them together? Do we want to take the transportation, bundle that, and then come back to the height one so that we can more specifically address it? We need some kind of motion.
That's what I'd like to see.
Kamaria Pettis-Knuckle from the City Attorney's Office. So you certainly, since there are 3 variance requests, you can, do a motion to you are either denying or granting the variance request.
But I'm of the opinion that we should bundle the transportation ones together, the loading dock and the right-of-way, because they go hand in hand. And everybody has the same sense of what those things mean to the fabric of Ybor and having to deal with it. So let's get a motion for that, and let's move into the tougher one.
I'll make a move for approval without conditions for the variance request at BLC 1804, 1806, and 1808 East Fourth Avenue.
No.
Oh, I'm sorry, am I on the wrong?
Yeah, it's BLC 21.
My apologies, let me start over then.
Someone almost got a freebie.
It's the second item on the agenda.
Yes, okay. Okay, move that the variance request for BLC for the property located at 1705 North 16th Street and 1704 North 17th Street be granted as depicted on the site plan presented at the public hearing to reduce the dimensions of the required loading space from 12 by 60 for tractor trailers to 12 by 30 for local delivery, and to allow maneuvering in the right-of-way for the loading spaces, because based on the petitioner's meeting of the burden of proof with regard to the 6 hardship criteria set forth in Chapter 27, Section 27-96 of the City of Tampa Code of Ordinance for granting variance as stated, and the evidence provided in this public hearing, specifically that this proposed new construction has unique challenges to meet the loading requirements within the street pattern of the historic district.
We have a motion.
Second.
We have a second. Do we have any conversation on that? Or, I don't think there's any attachments to that. This is the transportation 2
Right.
and 3. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Now, we need a motion or further discussion on the variance for the height increase from 45 to 54 in this particular case. Commissioner Schiller has expressed the desire to change the rules and to address the problem in the future, as well as this one. I'm of the opinion that I think that the height request coupled with the FAR and then with the historic preservation notion is sufficient for this board to make a judgment on the hardship. That's my opinion. If there's further conversation, we can have it, but we can also have a motion that would allow us to discuss it and vote on it.
I'd just like to hear a little bit more, because I think people are rolling over on the rules. We're here to do a job. It's, yeah, it's a clever way to go about that, I guess, if it's legal, but it doesn't address why I'm on this board. There are rules. You're supposed to obey the rules. That's it. No hardship here. None. There's no hardship. Every hardship has been there's a desire. I get it. I'm in business too. I get it. But I rarely get it. No, can't do it. I can't believe you're going to do it.
So, I just want to make sure I understand what you're saying. So you are saying that that there are rules there that say, here's what the criteria is, and they're requesting that we give variance on the rule, but you're saying there's really no hardship about them going against the rule. Am I understanding you correctly?
Yes, absolutely.
And so you're not necessarily, I don't believe, disputing the rule. You're just saying the rule exists right now, and there's nothing wrong with the rule. Well, that's irrelevant. Okay, I think I understand what you're trying to say.
Boy, it's odd that you should think you understand what I say when I have absolutely no understanding of what we're doing here.
Well,
And again, Kamaria Pettisnaka from the City Attorney's Office, the goal is if the commissioners believe the applicant has met the hardship criteria, then you make your motion based on that. If you don't believe that the applicant has met the hardship criteria, then you make a motion to reflect that as well.
yeah, because when I look at it, based on the criteria, the hardship criteria that we have laid out here, they've met that. And I am not disagreeing with you in regards to what the rules are. I think it's a sad thing that transportation's gonna come and, go against everything based on simple code, and it's like, okay, should we look at that? So it's kind of the same thing.
Yes. Yes, it
There's
is.
some old stuff out there that we're having to abide by, right, wrong, or indifferent, but if we look at what the criteria is today, in my humble opinion, I believe this particular applicant has met that criteria. If I look at the criteria today, do I agree that we should go back and look at the rules or the codes or whatever they are? You bet. But in what they presented today in regards to the hardship, I think they've met the criteria.
Maybe you can do a better job of telling me what that hardship is.
Well, from what Liz Welch understands, God knows, the way I see it is, the rule is X, and they're requesting that they go to Y. And they explained why they want to go to Y, and what the benefit of going to Y brings, and in that, that's the hardship that they're trying to navigate through. I don't know if I'm explaining your case very well.
No, there's no hardship. You just said that's the hardship. That's no hardship. It's a desire to do something, and it's finding a way to do it. No hardship.
And so they've found the way to do it, but what they need is the variance to be able to do it. They found a way to accomplish their goal and accomplish the comprehensive 2040 plan, meet that. They found a way to work through a lot of these things to help growth and development in Ybor, but what they have to do is they have to now get approval to go higher than what the current rule says. And I feel like I'm talking to a bunch of heads. We need to sit in a semicircle or something.
I like how the two of you are about as far apart physically as we can as well.
I don't know about that.
This is a precedent that is going to bother us for a long time.
Okay, I disagree.
I do too.
The height restrictions in any zoning classification are based on comprehensive plans. Within a historic district, we're even extra sensitive to variances, but it's based on protecting the fabric of a historic district, which means, especially under our purview, are the historic contributing structures. It's not like this is going to be the tallest building in Ybor. They're certainly taller, even catty-corner and adjacent to this project. Our goal as a board is to make sure that any new development fits and complements the contributing structures, and I think this project does that. And they have a right within their building envelope, for the FAR they're looking for. So we're basically just shuffling it around. We've done it before, we'll do it again, but thankfully it's based on every individual consideration for a specific project, which allows us to take in unique criteria every time we make these kinds of decisions. And I'm getting concerned by your discussion here because you're presenting it as such like we've never done this before. Every height variance we've looked at has fit under this criteria, this scope of what's presented and what our mission as a commission is.
I guess I'm through talking.
Well, I think that we have a variety of opinions. So I think
We need a
that
motion.
we should test some of these opinions with a motion. And I will say that in my calculus, the preservation of a historic structure, the relationship to an existing allowable height, and the expansion of that area within reason and under the FAR is all within our purview as a commission to consider, and that's why we're here. So with that, I'll put it to the commissioners for a motion.
I'll put forth a motion. So I'll put for an approval without conditions to move the variance request for case BLC 20-167 for the property located at 1705 North 16th Street and 1704 North 17th Street be granted as depicted in the presentation that was presented before us at the public hearing for a height increase from 45 feet to 54 feet based upon the petitioner meeting the burden of proof with regard to the 6 hardship criteria set forth in Chapter 27, Section 27-96D of the City of Tampa Code of Ordinances for granting variances as stated, and the evidence provided as in this public hearing, specifically that for the preservation of the historic building on site and to be able to meet the possible FAR development that they are allowed, that they be granted this approval.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second.
We've got 2 seconds. We have a motion, we have a second. We don't have any conditions attached. That's a clean motion. So all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
Motion carries. Okay, we've made it through the first half of the presentation.
Now the fun starts.
We have the opportunity to go into a certificate of appropriateness, and I would say, everybody ready? Let's roll.
Thank you, Commissioners. Is that right? Okay. Forgive me if some of this is redundant. We'll try to get through this. I've got 50 some odd pages, but we also have brought materials. We're looking today for approval for a certificate of appropriateness. And what I can do is just sort of go through the presentation, and then if you guys would like to talk about the materials and the material boards, we can discuss that as well. So when we were designing the project, obviously with the train tracks to the south, the 17th Street and the 16th Street elevations became very important for activation for us. This is the existing train station, which you all know. We'll just try to get through some of this. This is the existing site, existing train station. This is the parking lot. There's a CSX right-of-way here, of which we are not touching. Obviously, you all know the historical context for us when we purchased the building in 1998. It has served to be our architectural practice for 22 years, which is frightening to me that it's been that long. But obviously, we're Cuban immigrants. So the project itself has a really soft spot for us, and we're really excited. What's really interesting is this commission gave us a similar project approval in 2004, and it just wasn't the right time to do it. So we feel like this is, I also want to commend staff. A lot of the things that you're going to see today was through long discussions with Ron and Dennis, as far as just appropriateness. This is Jose Marti. We all know who that man is. We've got some conceptual precedents. If you, this is directly out of the Barrio Latino or the Ybor City Design Guidelines. As Ron had mentioned, we have because of the train tracks and the train station and the tracks going right by the building, it was seen really as an industrial building with metal windows that still sort of open and close, and steel windows, and we want to try to make sure that we still keep that. We've kind of developed a system with Modulo, a great subcontractor, of doing these great period steel windows. If you guys know, okay, this is Haya, by the way, and these are the other. This is just really precedents in the district that we feel are relevant to our project. Also just balconies, awnings, tiebacks, transoms here. Infamous loading docks, unfortunately. We're playing with this idea. This is from the Scientology building and some of these other, of creating these balcony screens in terracotta that we'll talk about in a minute. This is sort of a precedent. This is a project my father did in 1962. It's the Guyton House on Davis Island. And I've always sort of wanted to do that. We've got this in the courtyard that sort of screens the alley and also on the balconies themselves. This is some precedent images of what we see, the inner courtyard with a swimming pool, bringing in some strong color into the project internally. And this is sort of the proposition. So as you can see, the way the massing plays out, this is the datum line that sort of continues back. This upper piece gets sort of pushed back, especially gets pushed back 26 feet off of 17th Street. But also I think what's really important is this break that we have here, which is in between sort of the new building and the train station. And you can see sort of that notch here. Again, we see this as kind of a gateway from the parking garage into Ybor. You can see, it framing the wonderful Central Ybor sign. Hopefully it will have a positive impact on that project. But also this is really clearly sort of dictates that this is an office building up top. And, just trying to sort of be consistent with this live-work idea where we're activating, the street below with sort of non-office uses and pushing all the office upstairs in sort of this building. You can also see this sort of pushback here as well, the 3 feet pushback that sort of talks about the two different uses here. Just quickly on the floor plan, this is the restaurant use with the kitchen. This is a tenant and this is probably a gymnasium. We're talking to a couple of different tenants right now. This is the entrance to our office, little office lobby that sort of goes upstairs. This is the downstairs with some micro units, on the ground, the loading dock. This is a nice residential lobby. Again, trying to do the best we can to sort of activate 17th Street as well. If there's any questions, we can talk about that. And then as you sort of move up vertically, you can see this is our singular plate for our office. And then this is sort of the half donut that wraps around the courtyard. And then we have the sort of third floor, upper floor for our office as well. Mechanical space here, and then the upper floor of the units. So you can see here this break here, which is going to be the entrance to the restaurant beyond. We're looking at this as possibly if you guys know La Durée, which is sort of a little French cafe, something like that. And then this would be a retail, to be determined here. And this is the entrance to our office. Again, as I mentioned in the previous presentation, this kind of idea of changing the materiality to really help reinforce a lot of great districts. We've seen this not only in America but in Europe as well, where you have kind of this great datum line that defines it, and then sort of as it moves up, this sort of habitation of the roof space. And then coming back onto 17th Street, you've got, you know, the canopy here with the tiebacks. This is these, I'm sure we're going to have some discussion on these little terracotta blocks that are the balcony pieces. This is the loading dock piece here, and then the transformer. Excuse me, loading dock here, transformer. Did I get that right, Kim? Yeah. This is an aerial view that talks about, this is the elevation looking from the alley. It doesn't have the breeze block on it, but this is sort of, you know, that alley. I mean, I think also at some point I would just plug that I would love to have a workshop and participate in the alleys. I notice that you guys, it's always a big controversy to vacate alleys, but I do see our alleys are being used for things that are not supposed to be used for, and that's a future, hopefully, workshop that we can have and talks about our alleys. But this is really sort of a close-up view of sort of downstairs, where you can see like the new sort of transom up here, new entry into our office. We're using the same system. I don't know if you guys have seen the office buildings that we have done at the Heights, as you kind of turn around, where you have sort of this brise soleil grid that sort of floats in steel against the glass. We're looking at the same sort of detail here. Again, looking at basically plaster, and, you know, again, we have material boards here that we can talk about, but I think the palette itself, I mean, probably the two materials that I think we could have a really good discussion on is that we're proposing Corten steel at the base of our office building against the train tracks as sort of a kind of a response to that. Here. Which would be here. And then the sort of terracotta blocks. I mean, you know, obviously the fallback would be to go with just a steel wrought iron rail on the balconies of the units. We're sort of bringing something in to kind of warm up the palette a little bit, and I would love to hear from you guys about that. This is really great details. Like if you get a chance to go over and look at the windows at Haya, they're custom made. They fit all the Florida, you know, requirements of the codes and the wind loads and whatnot. But I hope that, you know, this would encourage other applicants to come in and actually do steel windows as opposed to the big aluminum section windows that you tend to see. Again, these are some sections, and if you guys want to talk about the sections, we can talk about those as well. There's a big cornice piece that we have here, which we have brought a piece. This is the actual cornice that you guys approved at the hearing for Haya, which is sort of an interpretive cornice that would more sort of industrial, and we think sort of fits this building type. And again, this is if you guys have not had a chance to go over and see these office buildings at the Heights, this is the grid that we're talking about in that large sort of two-story piece. It's quite expensive, but it's nice. And then this is just the weathered Corten that is at the base where the train, yeah, right here. And these are the terracotta pieces of the breeze block that we're proposing here. This would be sort of a black zinc-like material atop, and then bring that down and sort of wrapping underneath. This is this kind of residential lobby piece here. We've started the process, Ron, of our right-of-way signage, which I know that can be a lengthy process. Again, some of these are redundant from the last presentation, but we're actually also proposing to do some light blue Venetian plaster on the ceilings of the balconies. They don't really show up very well in the, so as you sort of look up, that would have sort of this light blue color that we pulled off of the Marti Park. There's these two panels that are next to the Marti that have this kind of robin's egg blue color, and we've got that on the board here. Again, sort of big steel custom doors, really nice hardware. All the hardware is sort of custom made by Modulo in collaboration with Alfonso Architects. Aerial view. There'll be some screening of the mechanical equipment that is on the new office building side. If you want to discuss signage, typically, I know that the signage was sort of pushed. I would love to hear the current board's philosophy on blade signs. I know that I've sort of seen that debate go back and forth. On Las Novedades, there's that big blade sign, but then, you know, on new construction, I believe at one of the last hearings, we're not sure whether we want to do blade signs, so I would love to hear how the board feels about that. This piece here. And again, this is sort of looking into the courtyard. This is where it brings an element of color into the courtyard. It's not really visible from any real facade. And I have some appendix, which you guys, I'm not sure if you have this presentation, but we've picked light fixtures. You know, we've sort of taken this thing way into DD in the hopes that, you know, certainly coming off of some of the new construction lessons that we learned at Haya, we wanted to get as much information in front of you guys as possible today. And again, this is these wonderful details and these custom steel doors that we're proposing in the project. Brass it's certainly I believe it's COVID resistance, the brass. That's what they told us anyway. So with that, it's a long presentation, and I appreciate your patience. Certainly, I would love to hear the pleasure of the board of what you want to hear.
Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. Ron Vila, staff with Historic Preservation. Staff find this application is consistent with the Ybor City Design Guidelines. The plans that we reviewed were submitted to us on November 24th. So the conditions that are associated with the staff report on page 4 and 5, a lot of the issues were discussed this morning. But I believe additional discussion needs to take place if they're going to go forward with a final this morning. Starting with the conditions on page 4, the location of the mechanicals and the screening. He did provide additional information on the screening, but if he could dive into that a little bit more. The signage, future signage, that includes the encroachment signage. There's a process for that. I would start the process immediately. On the south side of the property line, there is the railroad tracks there. And if he could elaborate on any fencing or security plans on that south side. If there's any rehabilitation to the contributing structure at this time that they're aware of, he could put that on the record. To have additional information or discussion on the aluminum curtain wall system. It's a unique feature that's incorporated into the district. I think it complements the area and the industrial sector, but if he could dive into that a little bit more as well. And then to provide a complete material and wall section from the top to the bottom, go through it in a systematic manner to discuss the overhangs, the exterior wall materials, the finishes, the final color palette, as we go on to page 5 of the staff report. The overhead doors that are on 17th Street and show the sensitivity as the pedestrian engages with those. And any additional trim. That concludes the staff report, and I'll be here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Ron. We have the opportunity for public comment for the certificate of appropriateness portion of this application. If there's anybody who is here to speak on that portion of the project, now's your time. Okay, seeing none, we can move to commissioners asking questions of the applicant.
I have none, thank you.
Couple questions. One is regarding the storefront and particularly the glass you're going to be using. You brought up a former project you did, the Hyatt Hotel, and as sensitive and appropriate as it is, I've noticed by walking by, especially obviously during the day, the reflectivity of the glass makes it really difficult to kind of enjoy that interaction between the streetscape and interior public spaces. I'm just wondering, there's probably a really good reason for that. It's probably meeting some kind of code for energies, but are you proposing the same type of glass on this project, on the commercial lobby, and whatever faces the street on the other side?
I mean, that is something that I mean, you managed to hit the nerve, right? Because it is a little bit too reflective, and unfortunately, that's the code. I would probably, in this instance, try to see if we can crank up, our HVAC to be able to counteract so we can get some more transparency, because obviously the magic is the transparency on the street, right, and you want to be able to look in and see activity. So yeah, that's a very, very good point. And our staff could take that down, and we have the fabricator over here, but
Excuse me, sir, you're
Yes.
not on the record
yeah.
speaking out in the audience.
Okay.
Okay, and then the other question is regarding the residential or the micro apartments. I know you're not required to provide any kind of on-site parking, obviously, within this block, but I did see a storage locker for tenants. I'm just curious, with the goal of providing ease of access to alternative means of transportation, have you considered providing any on-site lockers for bicycles or motorcycles or things that might
I think
tenants
that,
would be using?
especially with the tenants that would be renting this, I certainly think that that would be a very strong amenity to add to the project. And I absolutely think that we can make that work as into the project. It's a very good point. So I don't know how, some of these requests I can put in the record, and then we could work with staff and make sure that they stay in the project, because I think both of those are two very good ideas.
Those are the only questions I have.
Let's see, what did I? Oh, could you go over, maybe go over a section, and can we go through, like, maybe from floor to roof about the materiality of
Sure.
the project?
Let me see. We have multiple sections in the project. Do you want to pick one you want to see?
Maybe just a typical one through the office and then a typical one
Okay.
through the residential, because I know the Corten steel doesn't go all the way through the residential floor,
Right.
right?
Can I get one of my architects to come up to the podium? Is that okay? Kim, come up here. This is Kim Connell. I don't think she'll be speaking, but if she needs to swear in. That one, right? This is just a typical, right? So obviously, what we have tried to do is mimic, so if you look at the train station, can you find like a train? I'll tell you where we started, okay? Where we started was with the historical building. Maybe just a photograph of that. Right. And so this is where we sort of took our cues, right? Which is that dimension, the pushback cornice at the top, this sort of inset panel, and so you see pretty much a very, very similar section here. So you have sort of the cornice. I know that the scale is a bit tough. There's a bump in for the panel here, a bump back out for the panel here, a bump back in, and then, you have sort of the punched windows here, the steel windows. So this is a kind of a typical section on 16th Street, right? And with a push in here. Some of the doors, it was this business about doors sort of opening into the right of way, and so what we have tried to do is sort of recess those along 16th and 17th Street so you don't have sort of doors opening into the right of way. And this is the big one, right? The big space. So currently what happens is this is, again, the same sort of detail here, and then this sort of punch in, and then this is what I would call an interpretive brise-soleil, that these sort of pieces float on the glass, and they create a really interesting sort of effect, and in our opinion, they're, what we didn't want to do is sort of these sort of fake windows that you see where you've got the muttons sort of glued to the window on the inside and out. It's a little more expensive to do, but we feel that like it really carries this idea of steel and industrial as far as like these sort of big windows. So this is, I know this is sort of a cut section, but this is that large 2-story piece for the office building here. Which one's the middle panel? Yeah. So this is the Core 10 section here. So you can see it comes down from the top and then recesses in. What we try to do is wherever there is a change of material, there's a change in plane, even if it's subtle. And so obviously the Core 10 is a big change of material. So we would go from plaster in 16 inches, and then and then these are the slot windows that are going to be hopefully for the gymnasium that look out. Okay, so yeah, this is like a typical residential unit. This is on 17th Street. Yeah. So this is this kind of breeze block rail that you have here, and then this pushes down obviously with the tie backs for the canopy, and then this is this sort of steel gridded storefront piece that is on the residential lobby on 17th Street. Yeah, and so this is where I was saying that we could possibly, if desired, maybe add a light blue soffit color to the balconies. But we could also talk about this idea of kind of the warmth of this terracotta color, and certainly it's something I think worth discussing whether we feel that this is appropriate. I think it is, but certainly I would love to hear the commissioner's opinions on that, because it's not really in any of the guideline books, right?
What's exactly the steel grid system on the floor of residential on 17th Street? Is there a detail of that? Sure.
Talking about the ground floor?
Yeah.
Didn't we just look at that? So these are the sections of them, which is steel plate with a reveal and another steel plate, and then these are the sort of steel windows.
Oh, okay. But when the Core 10 changes, it looked black in the rendering, so I was just wondering if it's
Yeah.
just kind of that stucco with the.
There is a black metal panel.
Yeah.
He's talking about that over there. Is it this one? you know, that blow up. This one. This is a quite analog way to give a presentation. It reminds me of college. But then there's that blow up, right? There we go. Okay. Okay. So here, this is sort of a blow up of, I believe this is what you're referencing? Is this what you were referencing?
Sure. Is that sort of the condition that changes when it goes, as we go east across along the train tracks? Because I believe the Cortez sort of ends.
Right. So it comes along the train tracks and then returns in sort of 4 feet or so, and then there's this recessed stoop that has a metal panel and then our door. This is the entry into the architecture office.
Okay, and on that south elevation on the first floor, when that does the Cortez
Oh,
go all the
oh,
way
I see.
along the train tracks? Or?
I see. He's talking about, you're talking about this notch right here?
Right, yes. And then what
Yeah.
happens on the first floor, the residential building on that side?
Down here. So what happens is this sort of black zinc-like material comes down and sort of wraps in here
Got it.
and sort of pushes in 3 feet, sort of creates this kind of undercarriage, and it has that material change there, and then these are residential units.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
And then last question is there any rehab that's happening with the existing train building?
Yes, we are, currently the steel buildings are, obviously they leak and so we're going to get a great steel person that we know to go in and retrofit all the steel windows and really bring them back. They're really pretty interesting. They pivot on the center with a chain, and you don't see a lot of those anymore. So we really want to try to bring that back. I mean, the building's in pretty good shape. So other than that, there's really not that much to do. On the interior, obviously, we're going to really celebrate the interior space and really do something nice there.
All right, great. Thank you.
There is one thing. We are going to change. Right now, there's an aluminum door going into my office, or it's a steel door, so we're going to make that a glass door. So you can actually see into this bakery space.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks.
Can you elaborate a little bit on the courtyard area, like the pool and the divider space between the alleyway?
Sure.
and- I didn't see anything on that.
Okay. So currently what happens is, what's that? Oh yeah, they can't see it. I can. What happens is that this wall goes up to this level here, which is approximately 36 feet, right? And then there is a breeze block that sort of sits on top of that, so that when you're sort of in the courtyard and you kind of look up, you know, obviously the big thing here is just the sound issues that we have. And so we're just trying to really take care of that for the residents. This is a big amenity public space for them. And that's the other discussion. Hopefully we can, when you're changing the rules, we can have a workshop about the alleys themselves. That's a rough alley right there.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question about this? Since you have the drawing up?
Yeah.
Are the windows facing this courtyard, I imagine they're operable in some fashion, although given the scale, they seem like they are operable. Wouldn't they need some kind of railing as well?
Currently, they are not balconies, but they're what are they on the top?
They're operable. So obviously, if they're operable, they would need probably a rail.
Unless you change the configuration.
Yeah.
But that's what
At
you're
some
presenting.
point, what happened, Jose, is it was a hotel before, pre-COVID, okay? And now we've turned it into residential. And so we haven't really worked, I think there's probably needs to be maybe a horizontal break, you know? Maybe the bottom panel is a solid panel, and then you can open the top, something like that. And I certainly think that we're going to have a lot of sound attenuation on these windows, not only from the train side, but also from the alley side, and a lot of the entertainment. Our favorite Prana bar, for example.
Thank you.
Nope, all my questions have been answered by others, asked and answered.
Thank you, Liz.
I have a question. Could I ask you about the requirements of parking? We haven't talked much about parking.
There is no requirements currently by zoning on this site. There is a parking garage that varies between, depends on the time that you ask. They have 75 to 200 spaces available in that garage. The developer is also looking to purchase some adjacent parcels for off-street parking.
Understood. Then can I ask Mr. Marsh down there about parking, considering that we're going to do a restaurant, and retail, and residential,
I
and
believe
no
it's,
parking?
is it YC1?
Yes.
Yeah, under YC1, there is 0 parking requirement,
Gotcha.
so.
That answers that.
Thank you.
Okay, questions? Let's talk about the roof, or the rooftop component. If you have an elevation or an axo of those, I'd like to ask a couple questions there.
Does that work, John?
That'll work great.
Okay.
So is the rooftop on that portion, can you go out on the roof?
Currently, no, but it is in discussion with the developer, but currently, no.
And if you are able to go on the roof, how do you plan to address the facade?
So we would probably come back to you if that request was desired for this applicant. And my memory serves me when we got the balcony approved on Haya, there was a glass rail that was sort of pushed back 3 feet, so that it didn't really play a role, I guess, when you were looking up. That was the idea.
Okay. And if you can go to the other angle on that same type of axo.
Maybe, not sure if this does it. Does that do it?
That'll work for the starters there.
We have a bigger one if you want me to grab that.
Sure. Or we can just go with the one Chad. That one will work just fine. Yeah. So, question on this one. We had the conversation about the rooftop variance and you know, the occupying, how the roof becomes an occupiable space here, or habitable, as you said. I think it would be important to kind of continue that distinction in and around the building, where you see that the zinc kind of ends there as you turn the corner.
Oh, that's interesting. You mean here?
No, actually.
Oh. Because this
the
is
micro apartment side, where the micro apartments turn.
Oh, here?
That notch, yeah. So I think that there's an exercise where that push that you're doing there on on the ground floor and then bringing it up to the rooftop can turn around the corner and then inform how the courtyard works. It basically is a way of expressing the roof concept and the notion that it's something.
I'm with you on that. So if you look at this, it's actually a really good crit, is that you bring that metal would come here,
Yes,
and that metal would come here,
yes,
and it also would return back.
yes. And then you'd have the opportunity for that top floor of the courtyard to maybe change the articulation of
That would be quite
of that
nice.
wall, so that when we're talking about, taking a rooftop component and expanding it a little bit, we still are expressing it as a rooftop component. I think that would be important.
I think that's a big improvement.
With the notch and the pushing, and you can see it here in this particular or the axonometric as well,
Here?
the little push, yes. Does that just hit the wall and get coped into those articulations that you're referencing?
Yeah, so the idea here, if you look at this, right, I think the idea was just the desire that these two things sort of lived where you knew what was the original and what was the new. So the question is, does this return back, this lower piece? And I think that could be a really interesting play because you're probably going to see that when you're walking from the north. And I think that would be also a good material push back. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then when that piece hits your office, as it is, it's pushed back far enough to where it is engaging in the insets.
On the other side, you're talking about
On the
south or north?
The southwest corner of your office,
Yes.
there's, that thing pushes back 3 feet or so. And you can probably
Right.
see it in that
We'll
elevation
get
of
a
that.
better
That one that you
view.
just passed by.
Yeah, this one
Yes.
just doesn't quite show it, but we
Well,
do
pull
have
it, pull it to where you can see your office. Okay, so you can see where it has the blade sign?
Yep.
The blade sign, and then you have the corner turns, and you have a recess
Mm-hmm.
there.
Mhm.
And then you've got that black member, or that black panel slicing into that
Mhm.
effectively.
Mhm.
Is that just coped around that existing infill?
Currently it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the rehabilitation that you're proposing on the windows for your existing building, is that part of the certificate of appropriateness?
Yes.
That you're presenting today?
Yes.
Okay. Do we have sufficient information on the record to? as
Well,
part of-
for example, I'm sorry, John, I interrupted you. What happens is people just walk by and they punch those windows for some reason. They just feel the need to do that. So we have a bunch of new and old panels there, and so we would really just like to bring them back to exactly what they were.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is that noted in the drawings, or I'm trying to give Ron something to work with here when he gets down the road?
We can add that, Ron, to a motion if you would like, and certainly it's my office is right here, and it's really loud, and I can hear everything. So
Well, you
it
can say
needs.
it- You can say it, and then Ron can go back to this tape.
Okay, do you want to? Yes, we will be rehabilitating these windows, Ron. So.
That could be put down as a condition.
Yeah.
Yes, as a condition.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, those are the questions that I have. Thank you.
I have one more question, if we're going to be discussing the terracotta you're proposing. When I looked at the cross-section, it appears to be rather thin. When we think of breeze blocks, we usually think of 8 inches.
Mm-hmm.
which
These
is
are
maybe-
4-inch,
Okay,
4-inch
4
breeze,
inch,
4-inch.
okay.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we've had a chance to talk through the project with you. You have 5 minutes for rebuttal before we close the public hearing.
I do want to say that I really appreciate the previous discussion. I think that this is why there is a board.
that you have rules, and that's why you all exist, so that you can take each case on a case-by-case basis. I will say that, this is the culmination for us of being in Ybor for a long time, hoping that Ybor would turn the corner. This is a $40 million investment that is being made here. And I do believe that these projects, Richard Gonsmart's new, Casa Santo Stefano, what is it, the Copper Shaker? I mean, these are all really upscale projects. And I do believe that residential is the next wave. And if you look at what's the wonderful things that are happening in Water Street and in Channelside, they lead with residential. And because of our densities and because of we're in a historical district, we have to be sensitive to that. So I think that this project, to have this many residential units right off of 7th Avenue, again, from a development standpoint and the health of the district, I think is a very, very important project.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we'll close the public hearing and allow the commissioners to discuss the case.
No, thank you.
I feel the project meets the criteria for new construction within the district, and specifically some of the questions that were asked of the applicant. The blade signs seemed appropriate given the scale of the building and the public uses of the building. And in terms of the terracotta, when I look at detailing within the historic district, I look for quality and craftsmanship. And in terms of terracotta, what's being proposed really seems to fit those criteria in an interesting manner that kind of brings in a contemporary aesthetic to what's traditionally this sort of industrial aesthetic. But there are uses of terracotta with the more Mediterranean revival buildings within the district, so it's not completely foreign.
Yeah, I think the blade signs are appropriate as well, and it kind of harks to industrial nature, and the terracotta itself too. I think it just, in terms of the intricate patterns, can sort of reflect back on sort of like the ironwork and that kind of stuff as well, while introducing a warmer palette, as you were saying earlier. And I think it'll be a great project for Ybor.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add. I think it looked great.
Thank you, Alex.
I don't have anything to add.
Thank you, Liz.
I am concerned, though, that we don't have quite enough information for a final, given that the project appears to have gone through a change somewhat in intent and use. So that would be a question I'd like the board to address before we consider either a preliminary or final.
Well, I wouldn't be opposed to that. I think that if you're still looking, you had referenced the fact that you're still trying to figure out if you're going to occupy the roof. We really don't have a way to condition that we would see it again, other than to say it's preliminary and we like what we see, and we'll see when you have more closure on some of those things. I would like to see some of the discussion about the rooftop and the articulation of that, and how we address that aesthetically, now that we kind of wrangled with it in a variance point of view. How do we express that architecturally to where, we kind of do our due diligence of the board as trying to make sure that it just isn't an increase just for an increase. It has something to do with the aesthetic that was proposed as well. I do appreciate the material palette and the attention to the detail. I'd like to make sure that, if it is preliminary, we see more of that and larger examples of it. I think that we understand the scale and the massing and the intent of the project, and I think with a proper motion, we might be able to see components and more specifics again in the near future. So I'll leave it to somebody to make some type of motion.
Commissioners, Ron Vila, staff with Historic Preservation. As you move forward, there's outcomes of the public hearing. You could ask for additional information and push it to a continuation. You could ask for additional information and provide a list of outstanding items that you'd like to see as through a preliminary approval. or you could grant a certificate of appropriateness with conditions attached to that, and that was for final approval. So the point for me to interject here is if it's gonna go a preliminary route, give a list of items that are outstanding, so more information can be simulated at a future public hearing, and that public hearing will be condensed just to those items that are addressed for the preliminary approval. But, you know, it's the pleasure of the board. If the rest of the board feels that there's enough information here to move forward for a final with conditions that are discussed administratively, we could go that route as well.
And additionally, Kamaria Pettismackle from the City Attorney's Office, if the board is more inclined to continue the certificate of appropriateness, most importantly, the applicant has to agree to a continuance.
Understood. And you understand?
I understand.
Okay. Well, so we've got three ways we can go. One would just be straight up continuance, come and do it again. The opposite of that is approval with conditions that we delegate to staff. I'm in the middle there. I would like to suggest that we do some kind of preliminary approval so that the applicant has the confidence that the board isn't going to say no to what he's doing, and is more or less in favor of the scale and massing of what we have, and then give him a laundry list of stuff that we want to see to be addressed in the future with the same kind of intensity that we see in the current presentation, but to these details that we think will make the project a stronger example, and, you know, something that we carry forward into a final CA in the near future. That's my sense. If we can get a motion, we can see if it goes up or down, and then have the applicant agree to it or not.
And to follow up on that, I mean, I've just sort of outlined the largest issues that I would like to see more information on, and either whether they're conditions or not, but we've talked about additional information on the articulation of the materials along the roof line of what's being called the mansard. The details of the roof deck and railing, if it's going to be a usable space, fenestration within the courtyard, additional on-site bike or motorcycle storage, the reflectivity of the windows. Did I miss anything? I know.
Ian, I think that we can, when we see the rooftop articulations again, we can get back into, if we need to, any of the mechanical screen enclosures that may or may not change with that. I think that the rooftop articulation is both for the exterior and wrapping around all of these elevations that you'd see from the public, as well as the interior courtyard that would
So the material transitions.
Yes.
It's a long list, and they're pretty important elements.
Well, that's why I think that it's,
Yeah.
it's something that we should condition to see it in the future, rather than just saying, go have fun.
Okay. So it sounds like there might be support for preliminary approval with conditions.
I think so, but let's test that out.
Do we need to ask the applicant, or?
Well, we've closed the public hearing, so we'd have
Okay.
to open it back up. But I sense that the applicant might go along with it if we can get it as a motion that's approved.
Can you just recap quickly what you've identified as the conditions?
Okay, the articulation of the material transitions for specifically along the top of the building, which we're referring to as the mansard, the material transitions along the corners as discussed at the public hearing, the material and potential hand railing at the roof deck if it becomes an occupiable space, the window fenestration patterns along the courtyard, and railings if necessary, bike storage, on-site bike storage, the reflectivity of the windows, and additional additional information about the screening closures along the rooftop.
Okay. I think that covers all my notes, too.
Now, can you say it in the motion?
Sure. Okay, I'll make sure I have the right page here. Move that the,
It's at the very top of the,
preliminary approval, all right. Move to grant a preliminary approval for the drawings and documents presented at this public hearing in BLC 1705 North 16th Street and 1704 North 17th Street with the following conditions. The applicant come back and present additional information and details about the articulation of materials of what's being referred to as the top mansard roof level, provide additional information about how materials transition along the corners, provide additional information about the roof deck and potential railings, fenestration and window patterns along the courtyard elevations, provide on-site bike, motorcycle storage, if possible, additional information about the reflectivity of the windows along the streetscape.
and you're gonna state on the record the date that you're announcing is the next hearing?
Okay,
And that date will be January 26th.
okay.
January 26th, 2021 at 9 PM. That
9
hearing,
a.m.
9 AM, excuse me. That hearing will be held at Old City Hall. We're no longer in this room, so we'll send out.
What was the
information.
date again, January?
January
26th?
26th, 2021 at 9 AM.
Okay. And that we will meet again at the next scheduled public hearing, which will occur on January 26th, 2021, to be held at City Hall in the Commission chambers at 9 a.m.
And we just need a second.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion, we have a second. The motion has conditions, the motion is preliminary. The applicant understands the conditions and the preliminary nature of this approval.
Yes.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? See you in January.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Commissioners. I really appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman, could we just take a 2-minute break?
We're going to take a 5-minute break.
Okay, 5 is good.
The merriest, yes, the merriest. We wish you the merriest, the merriest, the merriest. You'll cheer. We wish you the happiest, the happiest, yes, the happiest. We wish you the happiest, the happiest, the happiest New Year. May your tree be filled with happiness, happiness and friendliness for all. May your heart be filled with cheerfulness, happiness and cheerfulness for all. We wish you the happiest, happiest, yes, the happiest. We wish you the merriest, the merriest. You'll cheer and the happiest New Year. We wish you the merriest, the merriest, oh yes, the merriest. We wish you the merriest, the merriest. We wish you the happiest, the happiest, yes, the happiest. We wish you the happiest, the happiest New Year. May your tree be filled with happiness and friendliness for all. May your heart be filled with cheerfulness, with happiness happiness and cheerfulness and friendliness for all. We wish you the happiest, the happiest, the happiest. Yes, the happiest. We wish you the merriest, the merriest, the merriest. You'll cheer. And the happiest, I say the friendliest, and the cheeriest. Maybe the merriest New Year's. Friendliest, cheeriest, merry, merry,
I never will forget the station where we met. You dropped your skis, a happy circumstance.
Good morning,
No
Commissioner.
one
Ron Vila, staff with
would have
Historic Preservation.
guessed we had
To
started.
conclude this morning's agenda, our last case is BLC 21-12. For the multiple addresses are 1804, 1806, and 1808 East 4th Avenue. Currently, it's a vacant parcel. It's zoned YC7. There is a structure that's being requested this morning of about 2,000 square feet. The request for a certificate of appropriateness is for that mixed-use building with some site improvements. Associated with this request this morning is a pocket park, if you will. This has been vetted through the City of Tampa's Historic Preservation Developmental Review process, and what is being presented is acceptable this morning. So it's a little bit outside of the realm of what you usually see, but I wanted to put that information on the record for you. Going back to 1929 in the Sanborn map, property is highlighted in the green, which indicates the parcel that's being requested with the 3 addresses attached to it. On the south side, you have 4th Avenue, and then on the west side, you have Angel Oliva Avenue, which is 18th Street here. There is an alley that runs to the rear of this project that will be utilized. Here is the overhead of once again, the property in question is in the green box. You do have a contributing structure to the east side of the project. You have 4th Avenue. This is on the corner of 4th Avenue and Angel Oliva Senior Street with the alley that runs to the rear of the property. This is looking at the subject site from 4th Avenue, looking to the north. You see the granite curbing that frames the property. You have some brick crosswalks that are throughout the district that was city initiated. This is looking at the property from Angel Oliva back towards the east. Once again, you have the granite, the parkway, and then the sidewalks. This is the contributing structure that I spoke of that flanks the property to the east. Directly across the street, which is 4th Avenue, to the south, you have a series of row houses and surface parking. To show the activity down 4th Avenue, you have these parallel spots. And this is looking to the east. And as you look to the west, subject site is over here, and you see the additional parking that is available within the district. This is showing the alley and the condition of the alley. As part of a future project, what was happening to the east, there was an agreement with the developer that this alley would be paved to meet transportation standards. So this alley currently is not improved, but it's in circulation. This alley will be improved as part of this project moving forward. And to conclude, this is showing the condition of the alley as it exists today. At this time, the agent will address the board.
Good morning, Commissioners. Tyler Hudson, 400 North Ashley Drive, here on behalf of the applicant. With me here this morning is Brittany Barnett, a certified land use planner with our law firm, as well as Margaret Cook, the co-founder of Practice, which is the project designer and architect. One very important part of the project team who could not be here this morning is Daryl Shaw. This property is owned by Mr. Shaw, and this project is largely his vision. As many of you all know, Daryl is an ardent supporter of respectful development in Ybor City, most recently with the Hotel Hyatt project. Another passion of Daryl's is animals, particularly dogs. Daryl is the founder and currently still the CEO of Blue Pearl Veterinarian, a national animal care center. And I like to think that this project really is designed in service of those two passions. Margaret's going to talk really about the details about the certificate of appropriateness that we're seeking. We're not seeking a rezoning. We're not seeking any variances at all. There is one, and just to refer quickly to the site plan, as you see it to the left is where the dog park is going to be. So you guys got it? Yep, okay, so you can see to the left is the intended dog park. To the right is the structure that Margaret's going to go into more detail about that is going to be essentially a residentially inspired cafe with 2 dwelling units on the second floor. And the green space surrounding that we like to refer to as the people park, but they are going to be integrated. As a side note, we are pursuing a formal decision process. These are currently 3 lots that we're going to combine them into 2 so that those 2 uses are somewhat separated by separate legal lots. The reason why I wanted to talk here at the outset is briefly about parking. As you all know, parking is real estate, and sometimes it's a poor use of real estate. These proposed uses require a total of 5 parking spaces, and only 2 are shown on site, really in the northeast portion of the site. So we're not getting a variance, so where are the other 3? They're across the street. Section 27-283.6 of the code allows developers to utilize off-site parking in service of their off-street parking requirement, so long as certain criteria are met. One of them is that they're within 1,000 feet of the location.
Can you adjust the plan so that we can see the total property?
Thank you. Sorry about that. So the 2 parking spaces that we're providing are there in the top right. That's a diagram showing where we're going to be parking the off-site spaces. It's literally across the street in the surface parking lot that is owned by an affiliate of this property owner. We've sent into the city attorney's office, and we're working with the city attorney's office on the parking lease that will be required to formally document that. I believe there's a condition that we certainly agree to perhaps add to the certificate of appropriateness to ensure that the city attorney's office signs off and we cross our T's and dot our I's on that, but I wanted to make the board aware of that. And with that, I'm going to turn things over to Margaret Cook, who's going to talk more about the design features.
Thank you.
Okay. Hi, my name is Margaret Cook. I'm the architect for the project. So Tyler explained a little bit about the project, but I'm going to back up a little bit. We were charged with creating a park space, just as parking is real estate, park space is real estate, and that's something that Ybor does not have a lot of. And so in a sense, this amenity of a park space with a little commercial retail building is a huge amenity for the neighborhood moving forward. So our project is on the corner 18th Street and 4th Avenue. There's a lot of momentum already happening on the street with construction happening or have now been completed in this dashed line. So you can see some of that down the street, but then this is the corner property with some existing trees in the middle, which we're accommodating to preserve. So these are some of the projects down the street. if you walked down this street 4 years ago, it looked nothing like this. I was fortunate to be a part of 3 of the 4 of these projects and helping build this street up, so there's a lot of exciting things happening. I was the architect for these 2 townhouses located 2 parcels over, which went through the barrio and was just completed this year. So from site design, big picture, 2 parcels after our formal decision, so 2 parcels, and the proposed building, could we maybe zoom out just a hair? Thank you. The project, about 1,000 square feet of retail with 2 studio apartments upstairs that is, Ron said, it's kind of nestled within a pocket park next to a corner dog park. And so I see this project as more of a residential scale rather than it having the commercial piece taking over what the form of the building would be. And so it's really a commercial use within a residential typology in the neighborhood. However, it does have a wraparound porch and really brings in the kind of notion of it being very approachable and still being a corner and opening up. But if this was mirrored and was put at the corner, it really would have turned its back on the street. And so we're really trying to incorporate the building into the landscape and then into the streetscape. So just to talk about the components of the site, we've taken advantage of the existing oak in the middle of the site, and which also provides a lot of nice shade for the park. The dashed line around here is the existing canopy, so it really provides a lot of nice shade that's already on the property. The idea for the retail space is that it is a very vibrant indoor-outdoor space, and especially in this COVID world, having the outdoor space is critical and crucial for keeping the economy vibrant and keeping people coming to places like this. And so the wraparound porch is over this porch that then spills out onto the park space. I'll get into the fencing and the site materials later on, but you see the parking in the northeast corner. We have a 5-foot buffer adjacent to a residential or landscape buffer adjacent to the residential group A. The building itself is probably between 14 and 15 feet west of the property line. So there's about 10 feet between the exterior stair and the property line to the east. The residential entrance for the units upstairs is over on the east side as well, with the stair going up the east side. For the dog park piece, we have an entrance off of each sidewalk, as well as an entrance from the people park. So there are multiple ways to enter and exit the dog park. The corner, being a corner, we wanted to anchor the corner. And so there is signage at the corner, and we also pushed back the fence so that it's not just a fence abutting the sidewalk, but we've actually pulled it back 3 feet to allow for a low landscape buffer to soften the edge there. So for the building, the idea was to take a typical casita, raise the roof for additional program, as well as open up an edge so that it opened up to the park space. Did this just go out? No. So you see on the bottom where we've lifted up 2 stories, we're keeping a very traditional rhythm across the facades, and so you see that here as well. From an elevation perspective, we're at 19 feet finished floor, which is roughly probably around 8 inches, give or take, around compared to the adjacent properties. The low roof overhang over the wraparound porch is also nicely aligned with the streetscape as well. So this is the rhythm down the street. Our proposed 11 to 12 pitch fits in seamlessly with the rest of the roof. It was another reason of going with the residential typology, so that we don't have just a flat kind of foreign roof here, that this is more in keeping with what's already on the street. The roof pitch itself would be expressed in the residential units upstairs, which you see here. This is in the townhouses we did down the street. So the roof pitches do get expressed on the interior. And then our setback off the street is 10 feet, and so that's in keeping with what's down the street as well. So this is a view from the southeast corner of 18th Street and 4th Avenue. So you see the dog park portion here with the signage anchoring the corner. Landscape is kind of hard to tell with the darkness of the screen, but the landscape at the edge of that, and then a wood fence at the property with the building, which would be a little bit lower. You see the height. As far as the height, we have the townhouses peeking through back behind there as well. So exterior materials and details. I'll go through the wall sections, but this is generally the palette we're looking at. 5V crimp metal roof, hardy board artisan with the mitered corners, so it's the thicker board. It's about 5/8 inch thick, so that you're able to get that nice clean miter. A lot of the foundation, it's a stem wall, so any exposed block would be stuccoed over, except that most of it would have the wraparound porch, so you don't really see the stucco. The exterior doors would be wood. The porch is the floor of the porch is a painted wood, and the ceiling of that porch is exposed framing. Accessories, details, we just have white and black accents, bringing in some green accents as well, being as it's in a park. Kind of tie that in, and some warmth with some natural wood exposed. So the south elevation, you've seen these in the submission package. Retail at the base. This is east-west is where the split of the units are, and so this is one full unit in these two windows, and you see the porch extending out over to the west. So here's the wall section. It's talked about metal roofing. We have exposed rafters, but not exposed tails. So there's a fascia board, but no soffit board at the top. And the intention is to paint underneath that, give a little bit of color interest, not bright color, but bring in one of those deep greens that references kind of being in the park. And coming down, exposed underside of the rafters at the low roof, as well as painted floor. And so the idea is that this is very kind of casual, yet very thoughtful, designed outdoor space so that people can enjoy being underneath the roof and then also spill out into the park. So here's a view of what that retail entrance would be off the street. And you see the residential entrance here with their stair going up the east side, and the dog park beyond. So there is an entrance with stairs up to the building, in front of the building, and then there's also a park entrance a little bit farther west within the wood fence. So I know this isn't what you're you're not, granting a certificate of appropriateness on, but just wanted to share with you what the floor plan is for that residential, or for the commercial space. Basically, when you come in, would be seating at the front, a service bar in the center that opens up to the west with an outdoor bar or pass-through, which is also very COVID-friendly, and storage and restrooms on the north side of the building. There's a service entrance at the rear that has access to the alley as well. So this is the west elevation with those two restroom entrances. This part in the plan, let me just jump back here, is recessed a little bit just to create a little nook, so to say, for the entrance, and because it changes materiality in this section here. So this is the folding window that would open up all the way against the wall on the north side, and then double doors. The idea is to keep a lot of glass there so that when you are inside, you're experiencing really being opened and out, looking out into the park. And this is the wall section through that point. A lot of the, most of this is similar to what I already went through on the south side, but you see here where you have a little bit drop ceiling. This is where I was saying would be some of the exposed natural wood in the ceiling at this opening, and there would be a different material at this recess because it's on the slab, so it wouldn't be the decking material. This is where the outdoor bar is. Total, this is about probably 12 feet from the building face out to here. So this is really how we want you to experience the park. You come in to the park space, there may be clusters of seating in the shade. We are proposing to keep the, as many of the sable palms that are existing on the property in the central area as we can, and then the building just spills out onto that. So these are just some views to give you a sense of what that really feels like. This is the north elevation, similar spacing as the south elevation. This is where the accessible ramp is. And so that's pretty much similar as the north. The low roof does have the exposed tails. Oops. The east elevation has this is the stair up to the 2 residential units. So this has a wood slat railing system, which is horizontal, which is in keeping with the siding. Here's an image, but even though it's natural wood here, my design intent is that it would be white, painted white. This is the service door, back of house for the retail. Each having a little roof overhang above those. Also, just so you see, this is the intent for the residential units upstairs. Like I said, they're studio apartments, so they're 400 to 500 square feet. And they're pushed back. The doors and windows are all on the same grid as downstairs. These are pushed back mostly so we can get a straight run of stair. So the site materials and details. The dog park is going to be artificial turf because it's the nature of being in a dog park. We are putting some landscaped areas around most of the perimeter. There's a little bit within the dog park, and then this part at the sidewalk is outside of the dog park. The exact species are not yet determined, but the idea is that it's low at the sidewalk and at the front edge, and then gradually kind of gets up to be a little bit higher in the back, more so as a buffer. It also would be a little bit higher along the east side too. There will be benches provided, very few, but still benches provided within the park, which we also want to be ipe and the natural wood. Same with these play structures for the dogs. We want them to be nice wood, ipe. They also could be a place to sit. And then the landscape, like I said, in the middle, the demising fence would be hidden within the landscape. So you really feel like both parcels are actually one project and connected. The details, even though they're not exactly specified, we want to be very thoughtful, and even down to the dog trash can. So we really want every detail to be thought about. The concrete at the traps and the parking, we're looking at a very lightly exposed aggregate concrete. So this is a diagram of the fencing, and the red is the metal fencing around the dog park on the left, and then the blue is low wood fence, and the orange is high wood fence. So the high is required per the BLC guidelines, and then the low is at the sidewalk in the back of the property, more for security. So I looked a little bit around the neighborhood too to think about inspiration for the fences and the signage. So looking at the typical casita again on 9th Avenue and taking kind of this up and down, simplifying it a little bit. and just kind of making that a very simple detail there. And then going to Columbia Restaurant and looking at the cast concrete details they have and thinking about how the corner anchored signage can be something heavy and have some weight to it, yet still have some transparency to it. So whether it's a cast concrete detail or this is actually a painted clay tile, but have some interest that's very Ybor inspired in the middle of that signage. So the dog fence at the top would be a metal fence, 4 feet tall. The lower wood fence would be 3 feet with a little bit taller post. And the east property wall would be 6 feet tall with slightly taller posts. So I'll end on this, which is a view from the dog park where you see the landscape in the middle is low and you see through it and you see through to the building, and it really feels like it has this indoor-outdoor feel and connection across the street, across the property and over the landscape. And in turn, the building then would also look out and look into the neighborhood. So that concludes my portion.
Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. Ron Vila, staff with Historic Preservation. Staff's finding that this application is consistent with the Ybor City Design Guidelines. In working with the agent, we tried to define the style of the house, and we came up with a Railroad National, which is very simple in the designs. We used McAllister's Field Guide moving forward with the simplicity of the project and the compatibility of the design with the Field Guide for the American Homes. It was a very complete presentation. I just have a couple of items for her to elaborate on the window selection, final color palette, and then for the downstairs commercial area, if there's any indication of kitchen equipment that will be exposed, any vents or grease traps or anything that need to be addressed as this application moves forward. One additional item is that if the artificial turf is to be incorporated into this project, that there be some kind of condition or motion attached to that that is site-specific, that this doesn't show up in the residential component of Ybor City, and because of the use that's associated with this request, that the turf is acceptable at this location. We do have John Marsh with Transportation. I do believe he wishes to address the board at this time. Thank you.
Just to reiterate, I believe what the applicant and staff has stated, that there should be a condition that they do their parking agreement before either permit or certificate of occupancy. Thank you.
Thank you. Have the opportunity for public comment if anyone wants to speak on behalf of this project for or against. Seeing none, we can ask questions.
Oh, thank you.
One question, and perhaps I missed it. Is the dog park public, or is it a private enterprise associated with the cafe?
I'll let Tyler answer that.
Okay.
Good morning, or probably good afternoon now. Tyler Hudson, 400 North Ashley Drive. The intent is that it will be open to the public. It will be privately owned, privately operated and maintained. There may be down the road a nonprofit that may assume ownership, but the idea is that it will be open to the public.
But it's not City of Tampa? Or
No, it's not. In candor, some of the due diligence that we did, and appreciate all of staff's help in working through this, it is a bit of an unusual use. It's very simple to explain, but city staff, development services was signed off on the approach.
Okay. And then if you could put the site plan up again, I just want to clarify, because you're rendering, there is a contributing structure adjacent to the proposed site. Your renderings kind of obscure that, and it might just because the scale of the house is diminutive, but I want to understand that street pattern scape that you brought up again. You had a wonderful rendering showing the.
Oh, I don't know that building is in that, that's why.
Well, not the rendering, I guess the elevation of the street that showed all the scale of all the structures. What I'm trying to understand is, okay, thank you. Trying to understand why you decided to put a very generous easement on what is the east side of the property, where that seems to not be what exists traditionally in the residential portion of the neighborhood.
So one thing is that 5 feet is the minimum of the building setback per the zoning. Really what we're being pushed to is the fact that we have an exterior non-rated stair, and so from Florida Building Code, we have to be 10 feet from the property line to the face of that stair. So that's really what's set then where the building is.
That's what's driving that? Okay. And then it does seem like you could accommodate the required parking along the alley, obviously minimizing the dog park, unfortunately. But, so that was just a choice you made to provide it legally off-site?
Well, I think we can all appreciate green space, and I think that if parking can go where parking already is, that it would be nicer to give that space over to green space and a space that people could actually enjoy being in.
Okay, those are the only questions I have.
Could you go over the windows and maybe the trim around them and how they
Sure.
incorporated?
I'll just put up the view of the front. Basically, this is Hardy Artisan, and so I'll just use this view because it's pretty straightforward. We just have a 3.5-inch trim around the windows, mitered corners, and a sill plate that would stick out beyond that, as well as a 3.5-inch below.
And then are they just to be white like the rest of the
Yes.
the building? All right.
There's also, these don't show a center mole, but the windows will come with a factory mole, so there will actually be some dimension with a trim board in between the windows when they're doubled up.
And then to Ron's other question, are there any sort of any vent penetrations or anything like that from the cafe on the first floor on the house?
So the kitchen will be part of a fit-out of the future operator, but the intent is that there's no cooking here, so no hood. And if there is some small exhaust from whatever kitchen equipment they choose to use, it would be out the east side, but the owner is going to the operator saying it's a no-hood kitchen.
All right, great, thank you.
Is the park going to be lit at night? I noticed some lights here, but is there any lighting in the park?
So the dog park will not be open 24/7. The idea, though, is that there will be some low-level lighting that's maintained throughout the night, just because you don't want to walk by a dark corner. But then the people park portion obviously will be a little bit more lit, because it'll be more activated at night.
All right, that's all I have.
And to staff's request about the kitchen equipment that could have exterior elevations, exposures, is there anything, I don't know what kind of cafe or thing you're going to have on that first floor?
Right, that's what we were just saying. I don't think that there would be, there will not be a huge exhaust, because the intent is not to have a full cooking kitchen.
Got it.
So we're
Okay,
saying
I missed that
no
part.
hood there. That's okay.
Okay, that's all. That was the only thing I have.
Question for you. Can you show the east elevation that you have there with the stairs? And actually, we can start if you, yeah. So I think that getting to Commissioner Gilat's comment about the separation, and I understand the 10 foot away for the stair, and it makes an interesting space. I mean, you're obviously taking, land that could have been a building, and you're making it a park. You're pulling a building away, and you're letting people walk by it. All that stuff is exciting. The thing that caught my eye was that these residential units, that they're obviously on the second floor, but there's an opportunity here with this stair to maybe create a threshold along the ground floor that is distinct from the wraparound porch, that creates that kind of sense of arrival, or oh, we're going somewhere to, you know, more, a private residence, potentially, going to go see a friend. And the thing that struck me was, you know, on that other image that you had the, if you flip back to it.
The view from that?
Yeah, the one that you were just showing us. It's right under that.
Oh.
Yeah, there.
Yeah.
Okay, so you got that, and you can see the stair peeking
Right.
down. Here, and you've got the address, you've got the mailbox. Where are these residences' mailboxes, you know?
Right,
And
so,
I guess what I was imagining was a kind of that articulation that you have there on the stair, creating a trellis or some kind of threshold that you walk through, that you mount the mailboxes, the A and the B or whatever it is. And you get a sense as you're walking along this street that, hey, look, there's something up there, and I know that maybe I'm going to go see a friend. I think it's a way to maybe take it and address it a little bit further, but didn't know if you had a sense of that.
I hear what you're saying. I think what I was really trying to do was not detract from the main building. I didn't consider a trellis or threshold, but in thinking about what that stair was, part of why I did the wood slat system was to give it some prominence on the side of the building, but not detract. And so I wanted to give it, you know, actually that threshold more happens when you're on the stair than it happens before you get to the stair. And so I do think that once you're on the stair, you do feel like you're on something different, and you have a different detail than what you're used to just going up a stair with kind of a typical railing. And so I think you do experience it differently, but maybe a little bit, maybe 3 steps later than what you're saying.
Yeah, I guess in my mind, I could see that piece kind of wrapping around and creating a door that you kind of, not that you have a door, but something that you go up and through, and then the mailman comes by and, you know, puts the, you know, all the junk mail in there, and then it doesn't have to go up the stairs, and so there's this sense of, you know, this place. And that you have people that are up there that, you know, their presence is acknowledged on the ground floor and the pedestrian scale.
To overlay a little bit more information on that, this access point for the residential is also the refuse access out from the retail. So it can't be completely devoted to the residential.
Right.
So the services and refuse are in the side yard, but the back of house of the retail is back here. So they do use this as well.
Yeah, the overlapping of uses doesn't bother me at all. I think it makes it even more exciting. But I think that, yeah, at that where the stair comes down, in my mind, there was a place to, you know, kind of say that this is something different. Here's the mailboxes, whatever. That was the one thing that caught my eye. In terms of the switching subjects, the signage that you have at the dog park, that masonry screen wall, it seems to be, although referential to other things in the district, foreign to what you're trying to accomplish in the rest of the aesthetic of the project. Are there different versions of that? Is that something that is just that you're, you know, sold on? I'm trying to figure out where does it come
Right.
from?
No, I'm absolutely open. I think that was a struggle of also the thinking about the different fence types. And so that doesn't want to be a wood fence there because of this, you know, the maintenance of that around a dog park doesn't make sense. And so changing that fence type then led me to changing, you know, then you don't want a wood fence or a wood sign. You don't want something thinner. So then it kind of led me to thinking of the other more commercial EBOR metal and a little bit heavier materials for that corner. I do think that the corner can withstand having that heavier piece there. It's a pretty prominent corner.
Right. Are there any, in terms of the building itself, it's raised up, and I know that we've got a wraparound porch around most of it. Are there any, is it masonry below that you're coming up off of? Are there any vents or articulation on that stem wall?
No, because most of that is covered with the wood
mostly
porch.
hidden.
You only see the stucco, the stem wall for about 10 feet right here on the east side. So there's no correlation to that.
Okay. In the dog park, or in the people park, on that image that you're showing there, what is that yellow, where it says park, and I couldn't tell what the proposed park finish was. I want to say floor finish, but it's outside.
So it essentially is a floor finish. It's, but it's stabilized gravel for exterior, so it's an ADA compliant surface to where that can be accessible to get back to the north side of the property for the ramp accessibility.
Okay. I couldn't tell what it was in the rendering.
Sorry, yeah, I actually meant to mention that in the other slide and I didn't. Thanks.
Okay, those were my comments and questions.
Thank you.
I appreciate the presentation. It's very, very well done.
Thank you.
I have one more question if we have time. Oh, one more question. I appreciate the hybrid and the wraparound porch, but I'm curious. I see a gate expressed at the property line for where you would access the residential above, but there's not a gate, obviously, at the stoop to the main door of the commercial establishment, and there is no gate at the what I'm calling the driveway. But it seems to me like this type of establishment with this kind of open area in a place that's technically open to the public when the establishment is open, you're going to want to control who can get back there. And it sounds like you're shaking your head, so you may have a solution.
Yes, I agree.
And I'm wondering, this is a question for the board, although we do see fences at the property line in residential areas in Ybor, I'm wondering if this is a situation where maybe along the commercial/residential area, the fence actually gets moved back, which then allows you to control it after hours, but then leave that kind of front yard effect to the neighborhood.
I think that, so I agree with the, security is an issue for the site. And I agree there should be it needs to be developed a gate system here. It needs to be able to be locked down. As far as pushing it back, that could work in front of the driveway. But we would be really up on the building if we pushed back. So I think we'd have to develop some kind of gate system, whether it's, retractable or a different type than just a swing gate. If we're not able to swing, if we swung out on the sidewalk, maybe it is required to be pinned back. I don't know, that's kind of a different issue, but.
Well, what about if there is no fence on the property line, but you literally push it back to so that there's a front porch, but then there's a way to, enclose it as it turns and across the driveway?
And you're saying to put a handrail then on the building so that then that becomes a barrier?
Well, or a retractable barrier so that the porch is open. I don't know. I'm just sort of thinking in terms of what's public space and then also in terms of needing to probably control access to that area.
I think there's a way to control the access with where the fence is at the sidewalk. I think it's just a matter of figuring that out.
And then just another question, because it's a really intriguing concept, and I'm intrigued by the notion of creating a residential appearing structure. Well, it is residential, but that's also commercial and everything up to park space. But traditionally, if you follow the hybrid, or not the hybrid, but the pattern of the street, what is the side of this property would be technically the driveway. I keep referring to it as a driveway. But then you said those are existing palm trees, and you're trying to maintain them?
Yes, the ones that are kind of grayed out are existing. So, as we get into CDs, we'll figure out which ones we can keep, but I don't see why we wouldn't be able to keep as many.
No, because my instinct is to not landscape what would be traditionally the driveway on this house, but.
I think it would just be very minimal. As far as thicker landscaping, that would be more at the perimeter of that people park, but then these palms, I kind of see it more as like a kind of palm court that you're kind of maneuvering through. It kind of gives a place for some seating to be kind of tucked up against.
So that would be not a hard surface in that area?
It's essentially a hard surface because it's ADA compliant. It has a little bit of loose material on it, but it's a stabilized hard surface.
Okay, I'm intrigued, and I'm just trying to understand the overall.
Yeah, I think there's opportunity to eliminate more trees. I was trying to keep them. They're actually kind of nicely compacted in there.
Yeah.
There's one kind of leaning, so maybe one goes,
Yeah.
but
And actually, I mean, a lot of times, there's not even room for vehicular access along the side of these smaller houses, so, okay. All right, I'm kind of answering my own questions, but thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. You have a chance to rebut or respond to anything that you've heard before we close the public hearing, but I think you've been playing along rather nicely, so,
I don't have anything else. Thank you.
yeah, thank you. So we'll close the public hearing and discuss the case.
No, thanks.
No.
No further comments?
Yeah, no comment? Nope.
I think it's a fun project. And I'm intrigued by how the different siting and the different use will really kind of ripple out into the neighborhood because it is unique and different, so
Yeah,
I'm
and we
excited
hope
to see
so.
it.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
And I really do like the elevations that you did along the street, and I'm sure that you're proud of them too, because you've been involved in a number of those different projects that we've seen over the past several months, or if not years.
Years.
Yes.
Thanks.
Yes, years. So if we can get a motion that captures some of the sense of where we're at, we can move forward.
And Kamaria Pettis-Knuckle from the City Attorney's Office, I'm sorry. And just a reminder of the conditions that Mr. Vila stated also from transportation about the parking? Okay.
I'll go ahead and make a motion then. This would be for final approval. Move to grant a certificate of appropriateness for the drawings and documents presented at this public hearing in BLC 1804, 1806, 1808 East 4th Avenue. Because based upon the findings of fact, the proposed project would be consistent with the Ybor City Design Guidelines of the City of Tampa for the following reasons. The siding scale and massing complement the existing patterns. The materials presented follow the design guidelines, and with the following conditions attached, that the applicant provide a parking agreement or a parking permit before certificate of occupancy is issued, that the artificial turf that's being proposed for the dog park is site-specific to that portion of the project, and that the applicant present a final design for any fencing, particularly along the residential portion, commercial/residential portion of the project as discussed at the meeting.
We have a motion with conditions.
Second.
We have a second. Does the applicant understand the conditions that are attached to the motion? And you agree to them? Okay. She said yes, even though she doesn't have a microphone. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? You're good.
Appreciate it. Thank you for the time.
Thank you. And with that, we are done. Thank you. See you next year.
See you next year.
Perfect day. We'll be singing the songs we love to sing.